The second reading is taken from Mark 10, verse 13 to 16. Jesus and the children. People were bringing little children to Jesus for him to place his hands on them, but the disciples rebuked them. When Jesus saw this, he was indignant. He said to them, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these. Truly I tell you, anyone who will not receive the kingdom of God like a little child will never enter it." And then he took the children in his arms, placed his hands on them, and blessed them. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Have you got the time? The disciples assume that Jesus doesn't have the time for little children and their mothers. They appoint themselves as his minders, keeping away nuisance and interruptions. Jesus surely has more important business to do than bless the children. Children who are not yet adults and in the mindset of those times, not quite fully human yet. But rather than see them as an interruption, Jesus turns his anger on the disciples. These children are precisely what the kingdom of God is about. The vulnerable, those who need to receive God's love and blessing and may not have anything to give in return, can't earn or buy that blessing, but simply receive it as gift. Our adult world has become obsessed with buying and selling, with earning, with qualifications and exams, and building up your CV. And none of that is what the kingdom is about. The kingdom of God is simply gift, the gift of God's grace and compassion and love and justice and peace. And that cannot be earned or qualified or bought through our intellects. It can only be received, entered into, lived out in ordinary human living. Are we ready to receive like the children? The kingdom of God belongs to such as these. Jesus tells his disciples to learn from them. Not because the children are innocent, they might be noisy street brats for all I know, but they were coming to Jesus to be blessed. Are we willing to simply come to Jesus today as we share bread and wine and be blessed by him? We come not because we are worthy, but because of the love of Christ that draws us to this table, that draws us to this act of sharing together in his name. Paul received that message long ago, and he learnt that he couldn't earn the love of God, but simply receive it. And he tells his troublesome church in Corinth what the message he received was. And Sue's going to read from the message version of this telling of how the act of communion began, how the Lord's Supper was first celebrated.
Excuse me. Readings from 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 23 to 26. Receiving Christ. Let me go over with you again exactly what goes on in the Lord's Supper and why it is so centrally important. I received my instructions from the Master himself and passed them on to you. The Master, Jesus, on the night of his betrayal, took bread. Having given thanks, he broke it and said, "This is my body, broken for you. Do this to remember me." After supper, he did the same thing with the cup. "This cup is my blood, my new covenant with you. Each time you drink the cup, remember me." What you must solemnly realise is that every time you eat this bread and every time you drink this cup, you reenact in your words and actions the death of the Master. You will be drawn back to this meal again and again until the Master returns. You must never let familiarity breed contempt. This is the word of the Lord.